Welcome to episode 92 of How About the Huskies. As always, I'm your host, Connor, joined by Matt and Andrew. And the quest for the three-peat is officially underway as UConn defeated Sacred Heart 92 to 56 on Banner Night at Gamble on Wednesday. Just a complete dominant performance. A game we obviously expected the Huskies to win this game by a decent margin, but we had a lot to take away from it. A lot of positives, a few negatives. It's opening night, so there's not really too many negatives, but we'll just jump right in. What did you guys think from this performance? Obviously, we didn't know really what we were going to expect from this team. We saw them play against Rhode Island in an exhibition game. We haven't really seen too much of them. Bunch of newcomers. How would you guys like?
Well, it was a great night to begin with. Our second straight banner goes up. The place is riled up from the beginning. Sellout crowd for the first game of the season. Like Connor said, there was a lot to like, but there also was a little bit to dislike. I'm not really a down person, so I'm going to start with the good, which is the fact that we had two double doubles. Liam McNeely had 18 points and 10 rebounds, and both of their Husky debuts actually. Tyrus Reed Jr. 15 points and 11 rebounds. I thought he looked really good, but in general, our offense looked very good, except for certain situations in transition where we kind of slowed it down too much and never could really get the set going and kind of force up a shot. Sometimes it went in our favor. But I'm going to start out with Liam McNeely, the freshman, his first real collegiate game, like we just talked about in our women's episode with Yana Alfie. 18 on 6 of 11, and man, can he shoot the basketball. I mean, it looks effortless. Like we were talking before this, he looks like last year's Caravan, where if he shoots it, it's going in. When Caravan was a freshman, he kind of was a little shaky, but when Caravan was open, you knew it was going in. And I feel like that's what we're going to get with McNeely this year.
Yeah, and I definitely took a lot of the same things away from this game that I seem to have taken away from the scrimmage against URI. Caravan is just like low key the best player in the country. I mean, if he keeps up performances like this, it's going to be hard not to view him as a top five player in the country. I mean, it's just amazing. 20 points, he had 7 assists, he had 6 rebounds, and he had 7 blocks. I mean, you're a few stats away there from a quad double. I mean, like you can go on, and I'm not gonna, but I'm just very happy with what we saw. And a lot of comparisons to Alex Caravan. Obviously, Liam McNeely, like you just mentioned, looks ready. He looks good to go. He looks like he's gonna be one of our top players playing 30 plus minutes a night. Super exciting, and the continued emergence of solo ball. You didn't Nobody mentioned solo ball, but I'm really happy with his performance. 4 of 7 from three, 5 of 9 from the field, 16 points. If you can do that every night solo, like this, it's just going to be an amazing team this year. You hear doubts about the front court, but it looked fine. Obviously, not the biggest Sacred Heart team, but everybody came out and looked pretty good.
And your average casual college basketball fan would see Caravan's stat line with the 7 blocks and 20 points and think this guy's got to be 7'3". No, he's actually 6'8". And I think that's the most impressive thing about this game. 7 blocks at that tall. I mean, you would think that's a Klingon stat line, and it was last year. But obviously, he's far taller than him. But I do also want to mention solo ball. I really like how comfortable he looks shooting the ball. Honestly, I agree with, I forget who said it, if it was Evan Rodriguez or David Borges or somebody said it, but Joe Arruda maybe, I don't remember. But this team being our best shooting team out of the three, I was skeptical at first, but now I think that he might be onto something because Solo Ball had 4 threes and 16 points. I mean, Solo Ball didn't play a lot last year. He did when Castle was out, but he kind of fell out of the rotation this year. Hurley's been harping on the fact that he's taking a big jump, and he showed that jump in Monday night's opening game. Wednesday night, excuse me.
And this isn't even all we have. I mean, players who were essentially non-factors, Ahmad Noel, Isaiah Abraham came out. Noel didn't even hit a three. And in my opinion, he's our best shooter off the bench. And I mean, if you kind of get that efficiency, out of him, then I mean, this team's going to be scary. I don't think he's going to come in and play many minutes this year, but it's just having these guys ready and having them practice around these guys. It's building a culture, which like I don't know when is going to slow down.
Yeah, Noel, he only played in 9 minutes once the game was already decided, but his physicality, he just looks like a dude that probably should be playing football. And he's only 6 feet tall, but he's just so built, ready for the Big East. Looks like a typical Big East guard. But I'm gonna do my wraparound of some of the guys. Solo ball, as you all already talked about, 16 points, his career high. I will bet a lot of money that's not the last time we're saying solo ball career high this season. He's gonna keep on going up and up. The Caravan, we guys touched upon it well. 7 blocks. He was Klingon's roommate for a couple of years, so learned something from there. McNeely looked really good. He looked like a guy that wasn't playing his first college game. I talked about on our women's recap of the Boston University game that Sarah Strong looked like she wasn't playing her first game. I feel like there's a good chance we could have national freshman of the years at UConn. Obviously, that's maybe a bit of a stretch for some of the talent in this country, like a guy at Duke named Cooper Flag. But yeah, besides the point. Aiden Mahaney, we haven't really talked too much about him. He started maybe a little bit surprisingly. I feel like in that game against URI, sure, Mahaney did well, but Diarra was in the starting lineup. But Hurley put Diarra off the bench. Mahaney started in his UConn debut, did not score, only took 3 shots in 23 minutes. I personally don't think he played poorly. It's just that everyone else was getting their looks. It was everyone else's night. He just wasn't in the right spot at the right time. It's not like he went 0 for 8 or something. He only took 3 shots, 2 from deep. But what were you guys' thoughts on Mahaney's opening night performance? I feel like it could go a lot of ways.
I also wouldn't say that he played bad, but he didn't necessarily look comfortable out there per se. Like McNeely looked like he could shoot the ball all night long, and Mahaney, the 3 shots he did take were like good shots, but I just like noticing his body language that like he wasn't ready to shoot. I don't know. It's just like it's a weird thing because he's a very good shooter. We all know that. We saw that in the URI game, but I don't know. I think it's going to take him a couple of more games to kind of get going, but I think there's no need to overreact on this one. He's going to be completely fine, but I don't even know how to describe it, honestly. He just like, I don't know. I guess I'll just go with not ready as the way to describe it. I don't really know.
Yeah, and I feel like it's very easy to kind of look at that performance and overreact and think very deeply into it. It's easy to look at the box score and be like, oh, he had 0 points, 23 minutes against Sacred Heart, and be a little disappointed. But I think in general that he's going to get it going. He's too good of a player to not get it going. He's been in college programs which have played very tough competition, and I believe, it's a little bit of a comparison to freshman year Tristan Newton. I remember back, in those early preseason games with Newton, he would put up goose eggs, and we'd all be like, "What's going on?" And then his numbers hanging up in Gamble right now, if I'm correct. So I'm not too worried. I think Mahaney will be just fine. Like you mentioned, I think it will take a few games, but overall, I'm not really worried at all. I'm still very positive on him.
Yeah, and coming in as a transfer at St. Mary's the past 2 years, he's been the guy. He's been the number one scoring option for a pretty damn good program out in California. Over here in UConn, he's probably option C or D scoring. Obviously, we've only seen one game, but I put Solo ahead of him. I put Caravan ahead of him, probably McNeely ahead of him as well. So he's probably the fourth scoring option on this team. That's something he's not used to. It's certainly something he's going to have to adjust to as the season goes on. And it's not easy to do overnight. Obviously, he's had practices for the past, 5 months now. So it's not like he's been thrown right in there. But I'm not too worried about it. It's going to take some time to adapt in an actual in game flow to him having a lesser of a role. I still feel like he's a guy that fairly easily will average double figures for us, whether that's in the starting lineup or maybe it's a switch. He comes off the bench. But yeah, I'm not worried at all about this performance.
I don't think anybody should be, even for like a performance like for Hassan Diarra, 1 for 6 from the field and 0 for 4 from three. Didn't look great shooting the ball in general on Wednesday. I even don't think that that needs an overreaction, but him, I'd say the three, like not necessarily bad, but like, I don't know, like if you were just to split the performances, I think I would split them Caravan, Ball, McNeely, Reed, and then Stewart, Mahaney, DR, and the rest are kind of just like in the middle. But I did see a lot to like. Defense in general is going to need a little bit of work, especially in transition. I feel like we kind of got caught lacking a little bit in transition with our backs turned sometimes, gave Sacred Heart a couple of easy buckets. But I think in general, this team looked really good. And I can't wait for when we play really good teams starting soon.
And Hurley loves to play the matchups. The URI game, the big men looked completely lost, and we were kind of overreacting to that already, where we were like, who's going to be the starter in this front court? Who's going to take over the front court? And in a matter of weeks, it's already flipped entirely on its head to the point where it's now, we've hardly talked about the front court. Terrence Reed put up a phenomenal game. Samson Johnson in foul trouble. but you get used to that. And but just flipping it around like this now on the backcourt, you're not entirely sure who your key ball handler is going to be. I wouldn't worry at all about it at all with Hurley. I know Hurley is thinking about this stuff every single day. He's a freak, but I just think that, like I said, it's very easy to overreact. But Hurley's got this. He knows more than us.
Yeah, I was gonna go to the front court next because I feel like you mentioned in I think it was the recap of the URI game, Matt, that at center we might just go with the hot hand. Terrace Reed was the hot hand on Wednesday night, 15 and 11. He reminded me a lot. I guess I'm just saying this because we haven't had a player play his style of game since him. He looked like Adama Sanogo out there. Obviously not to the same dominating extremes that Sanogo was. I don't maybe Reed can unlock that at some point, but just the way that he caught the ball, just used his sheer like size and strength to just go down to the basket, lay it in, didn't really dunk it in too often, kind of like Sonogo. I don't know, physicality wise, I feel like I saw that comparison. But Sampson, talk about Sampson real quick. I mean, he did foul out in 16 minutes. That can't happen against Sacred Heart. I know I don't like taking negatives, but he's gonna have to play a lot better than that. Sacred Heart, their starting big man, or the biggest player in the starting lineup was 6'8". They had a 6'11" guy on the roster, but he played at the end. Didn't really matter. So a smaller MAC school, I'd really prefer Samson Johnson to not foul out. He was good when he was out there. He blocked 2 shots. He first scoring play of the game for UConn. He got the steal, took it coast to coast, and slammed it in. So certainly a lot of positives to take from him in his first opening. Actually, that's a lie. It's not his first opening night start because he started 2 years ago in place of Alex Caravan, but his first time starting at center on opening night for the Huskies. So maybe some jitters in there. I don't know, but you just can't be fouling out against Sacred Heart, man.
Yeah, and you mentioned Reed Jr. playing like Sonogo. Hurley definitely sees Reed as tiny bit of a project. Obviously, he's a junior, but he definitely saw like small things within Reed's game that he could easily, tweak and get the coaching staff on to, make him slightly better, slightly fit the system a little bit more. And, maybe we'll be seeing a dominant Terrace Reed. These things do take time, however, and if he can develop, that inside game, he shot 5 of 7, pretty efficient. If he can continue to just keep that efficiency and be good around the rim and use his size, I mean, he'll be a force. But I mean, until then, you just kind of got to keep working with it.
I think Curly's after this game, he's licking his chops with Reed because he's done a great job uh, developing centers in the last couple of years with. I mean, I guess you could count Carlton in there, but mainly with Sonogo, Klingon, and Johnson, just teaching them how to really be big men. And I think that he's really excited because I think he can turn Reed into an NBA draft prospect, honestly. I think that in 2 years here, that he can absolutely just little things, just teach him more like footwork. I mean, if I was to take one thing from his game that he needs work on, maybe it would be the footwork. But I agree with what Connor said about him being like Sonogo. I saw lots of comparisons to his game. Obviously, like I just mentioned, the footwork, but they look like the same player. I think Reed's just a little bit taller than him, but I think Hurley's going to turn him into a draft prospect for sure.
And this was looking at his career stats. This is one of the best games of his career. Obviously, he played 2 years in Michigan before this. He played 66 games there. He only had one time where he had a 15-point double-double in those 66 games. He did it in his first game off the bench at UConn. So clearly Hurley really loves this guy for good reason. You guys remember when he visited, it was during the national championship parade. He was there. So Hurley clearly wants to prioritize him, getting him in that early in the recruiting, the transfer portal process. So yeah, I feel like Terrace Reed's going to be a fan favorite this year for the Huskies. We saw it in that first game.
And with Sampson, constantly in foul trouble, he's probably going to have to pick up some of that slack, some of those minutes. You don't have many options there behind him, and Youssef doesn't look like he's going to be playing that much at all this year. So you really need a lot of the Terrace Reed. It's definitely a big project, but it could definitely pay off.
Do you want to see the Huskies in action this season? Of course you do. We at How About Them Huskies are here to help make that happen. We partnered with SeatGeek for the 2024-25 season to provide you guys with the best deals on all of your tickets. It's simple. All you do is download the SeatGeek app, choose your seats. The greener the dot, the better the deal is. And when you're going to the checkout, plug in the code HBTH for $20 off your first purchase of $50 or more. Tickets to see the back-to-back national champs are certainly pricey. Believe us, we know. But using code HBTH on SeatGeek saves you a bunch of money, and you can use that elsewhere during your game day trip to stores or Hartford. It's not just for UConn games, however. You can use SeatGeek for all types of events such as basketball games, football games, hockey games, concerts, the list goes on and on. And if you use code HPTH to check out for any of those events, you save. Once again, that's code HPTH on SeatGeek for $20 off your first order of $50 or more. The Huskies need you to be there during their run towards a three-peat. Be there with SeatGeek. Next player we'll talk about, we didn't really touch too much upon, Jaylen Stewart. He is someone who's been in the news in the Husky world for a little bit here after the comments that Dan Hurley had on Big East Media Day. And Stewart, I mean, 2 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists. What'd you guys think of him? I feel like I felt similar vibes to that URI game where, like, I feel like he didn't get that much better than last year. He's still a solid player. He's still going to have major impacts on this season for us. We need him to be good, but I don't know. Second time really seeing him didn't really pass the eye test for the second straight time for me.
Yeah, and I'm having a really kind of hard time understanding what's going on here. I mean, like at the media day you mentioned, Hurley says Ross over Stewart. Ross is over Stewart if the season started that day. But I mean, it's very weird to me because these things don't tend to last here in Connecticut with the Huskies. Hurley is usually very like strict and very on top of what's going on. And I would be surprised that Stewart stayed. If this was a full off season thing and like this was a big problem in a way there, I would be very surprised that he even stayed over this off season. I mean, let alone next off season. So I feel like whatever happens over the next 2 months, I mean, we're gonna see at the start of the season where in this rotation he fits in, if he's even gonna be here next year. Because if you don't put the work in, Hurley's gonna get rid of you so fast.
Yeah, I don't know. He was 1 for 4, 2 points. I'm not gonna say he played bad, but just it was kind of like Mahaney. Like he just didn't look comfortable out there. I feel like. I mean, I don't know. He had a lot of confidence from the Big East tournament into the tournament, and we played really well against St. John's in the second round of the Big East tournament. Played decently well in the tournament, and I feel like I don't know what happened. Maybe it's the reports of Ross beating him out for the spot, but I mean, I felt kind of agree with what Matt said. Unfortunately, we might see him fall out of the rotation. That would suck. I think he's a really good player, but like Matt said, if you don't put the work, not saying that he hasn't put the work in, but it's got to translate into the game too. So obviously, like we just said in the women's episode, these games, these bye games, are also for Hurley kind of games to realize what his rotation is going to be for when it really matters. And this is kind of like tryouts for a lot of these guys. So I'm going to be really interested to see what he does for the rest of non-conference play.
And Mahaney, I feel like, gets a little bit of a pass here. It's obviously his first game as a Husky, still learning the system. This is Stewart's, he played a full season here. Obviously didn't play too much, but he got a full year in practice. He got plenty of time towards the end of the season into the tournament. He, should be down by now. He should understand what is going on, and it just kind of seems like he doesn't. He's kind of running around out there like a chicken with no head. It doesn't make much sense to me, and it's in my opinion, since Hurley's been here, one of the weirder stories that we've had. But you obviously hope that it's all just unlucky and that he has been putting in all the work that he needs to be, and that things turn around for him.
Yeah, I feel like we're really bashing Jaylen Stewart after an exhibition game and a game versus Sacred Heart. But we're not really looking at the other side of that Hurley quote and the fact that we have the second coming of Christ in Jaden Ross, who did not play in that game against Sacred Heart with, I believe, an ankle injury. What is the exact quote from Dave Borges? He has a real shot in quotations at playing Saturday night. And after that game against Sacred Heart, Hurley said if Jaden Ross was available, he'd be in the starting lineup tonight, which made everybody think, where? First of all, I mean, solo balls are in the starting spot. You're not putting McNeely off the bench. Caravan obviously is a starter. You need a center out there. Are you going to go Jaden Ross over Mahaney and go no real point guard, go almost positionless? That's something that was really interesting to me. But Dan Hurley is really high on Jaden Ross, probably as high as I've seen him on anyone. I feel like he called him a top 20 pick in one practice. At least he looked like a top 20 pick. Not that he would be. He said he's obviously ahead of Stewart. Now he's calling him a starter after not playing opening night and not playing really at all his freshman year. So maybe we're in for a treat on Saturday if Jaden Ross plays, but I don't know. It's really interesting to me.
I mean, that's a take that's going to get him if this is just a big if. If Jaden Ross were to play on Saturday and he does not do good, that's going to be a take where people are going to be like, what the hell is he talking about? And it's going to be a take that either he's going to have to, pride himself and say, I was right, the rest of you were idiots, or, you know, he didn't play as good as he's looked. I feel like it's going to be a weird situation because to be that high on somebody who didn't play really at all last year. Like you knew he was going to come in late in the games when we were up big, but he never cracked the rotation in games that really matter. So it's going to be like don't get me wrong, I really hope he's good because if he's as good as Hurley says he is, then his team's going to win the national championship again. But I mean, I'm really curious to see, and if he does play Saturday, I'm really going to be watching. I'm going to watch the game, obviously, but I'll definitely be watching him in general just to see how he plays. If since he was technically hurt, I don't know if he'll start that game. But just in general, I'm going to be really watching him. But if Hurley really is right about him, then we are in for a treat.
Yeah, and I mean, just the confidence overall in Ross is something to really get behind and, kind of follow this journey here. Connor mentioned before we started recording, he was kind of like the obvious fourth last year out of that Fab Five recruiting class, and it was hard to kind of look elsewhere. I mean, he was behind Stewart, he was behind Ball. I mean, Ball didn't have the most effective season, and Castle's in the draft. So, I mean, you're kind of looking at someone here who barely cracked the rotation. So it's pretty exciting to kind of hear all this positive news and just how much Hurley is willing to double down on it and willing to kind of, push this narrative that Ross is this superstar that is going to break out this year. So I'm pretty excited. I hope he ends up playing.
Yeah, I'm all for it. Don't get me wrong. I'm just curious to see because I haven't seen him play at all since this has all happened. What is he better at? Like, what has he done better? Because last year he played 23 games, pretty much all of them except some of the early ones were in mop-up time. He shot 27% from the field and 9% from three. So is he just a great three-point shooter now? Is he a guy that can attack the rim, create his own shot? I feel like I don't know what Jaden Ross is going to look like. Is he just going to jump out of the gym like Andre Jackson did now? We have no idea. Hurley's as much as he's gone off about how Jaden Ross is this awesome guy now, there's been nothing like seen on him. So I don't know. It's a really weird whole saga. I feel like the saga we're kind of creating ourselves a bit with the whole Ross and Stewart thing. So maybe we're overreacting to it to Hurley's quote, but I don't know. It's just I'll say it again. I can't wait to see Jaden Ross in action, whenever that may be. Saturday, Wednesday, whenever.
Then you ask what he could be better at. I feel like in a Hurley system, it's all about finding your spots, just like putting yourselves in positions to be successful. And I feel like Ross, it sounds a little crazy, but I feel like in this system, he could kind of be like a Jaylen Brown type player where he's just phenomenal on defense. And if he can find his spots on offense, he doesn't need to create shots for others. He could just, sit up high post and do a few dribbles and get an easy mid range. He's big enough to do that. I'm really excited to see, not just these performances, stat sheets, but just like where he ends up. Is he going to shoot more threes? Is he going to be a mid range guy? It's very exciting.
Yeah, I think that pretty much covers everything from that opening night game. We'll talk a bit about the New Hampshire game of preview. We played them a lot over the past couple of years. Last year, they didn't give us a game example. They had a couple of guys that knocked down a bunch of threes to make it a little interesting, but they're always a well-coached program. We played them. If you played them back in the last year, the American, that was the 2019-20 season as well. So familiar opponent, but we're not going to get too much into the details for this one. I want to hear some players to watch for you guys. Obviously, it's still early in the season, so really anyone. But after seeing that first game, is there anyone that sticks out for you? Players to watch?
You know what? Screw it. I'm going Jaden Ross. I'm on the hype train. Let's see what he's got.
Yeah, Ross, I feel like is the very obvious pick here. I'm gonna roll with McNeely though. Great first game, double double. I want to see how he carries it over into his second game. If he can put up another great performance like that, then I feel like that hype train is going to start to build up as well.
Andrew stole my whole bit. I was going to say Michael Jordan because he's also number 23, but I'll go Samson Johnson because I want him to be eligible to play when the buzzer sounds at the end. I don't want him to have five fouls. So just don't foul out Samson Johnson and we'll be all good. But also, I don't know. I feel like we could choose anyone here. I'm also curious to see. I know I'm cheating and choosing two. Jaylen Stewart after his rough performance. Just all the guys that really struggled, Mahaney included, but they could be players to watch. But yeah, really anyone.
Feel like you could also say Reed. This is a lot like the first game where you can just watch everybody and there's an interesting storyline going on. But I also want to see Reed continue that momentum as well.
Yeah, the players to watch segment of the episode will get a lot more interesting in January than it is on November 8th. But you guys got any last points before we wrap up here? This was a lot of fun. I love doing these recap episodes, talking about what we saw, just analyzing the game. These are my favorite types. There'll be a lot of them over the next few months. The next one, we'll definitely try to bang one out after this New Hampshire game before Le Moyne, just to give you guys a preview. Obviously, the game shouldn't be too close. They should be another 30 something point blowout. I'm going to look up to see what the line is on this one because there's a 35.5 point line on the Sacred Heart game, and UConn won by 36. So clearly the bookies know what they're doing. I'm curious to see what this one is for New Hampshire, if it's even out. I don't see it right away, so I'm guessing it's probably somewhere around 30. But yeah, I'm rambling on here at the end. Thank you guys for watching. Our next episode will come out early next week, recapping this New Hampshire game. And yeah, see you in the next one.